Welcome back, ladies. I know it's been a very long time. I said I was going to share this video like 4 weeks ago, but your girl doesn't want to burn out again. So I'm trying my best to not burn out, and it's been a little chaotic lately. So here we are. Today I'm going to talk about my journey with estrogen dominance and what I did to reverse it after 9 years. The first signs of estrogen dominance started back when I was in college. It was probably 2012, 2013. I was exposed to mold in my apartment. We had a flood and they didn't take care of it. They didn't care and they let it sit like that. I didn't know anything about mold at that time. So I developed a rash all over my body. It started in the stomach and then the back. And it turned into what's called tinea versicolor, where you develop these white patches all over your body and they do not tan. I only became aware of this when I would go to the beach in the summer because I would look like a zebra. There were so many white spots and patches all over my body that would not tan. And my skin was super itchy. I started developing yeast infections that wouldn't go away. I never had yeast infections before. I never made the connection with the mold. These are super common with mold exposure. In addition to that, I also developed symptoms of estrogen dominance, where I was PMSing during the luteal phase, and my cycle became extremely heavy and very painful, debilitating. I was in a fetal position for the first 2 days or so. I would try everything, heat therapy, all kinds of over-the-counter medications for pain, and nothing would work. It was horrible. At that time, I was introduced to birth control. I was completely against birth control. Coming from Albania, I was raised to not rely on any prescriptions and to only go to the doctor if it was very necessary. Otherwise, we'll just do things at home, very natural. So I was completely against that, but at the same time, I was being tortured every month. And so I just thought time to give it a shot because it was unbearable. So I got on birth control and I stayed on birth control for 7 years. During those 7 years, I could control it, first of all, which was incredible. I could skip months if I wanted to, which, looking back, not a great idea. My cycles got super light. There was no pain whatsoever. But I still had, from time to time, headaches or migraines in the luteal phase. I didn't realize at that time that when you take birth control, you're also adding more estrogen to a system that is already estrogen dominant. At the same time, if you didn't know, birth control also depletes your nutrients, and we need the same nutrients, actually, that birth control depletes to help detox estrogen from the body. So we're pretty much slowing down the detox pathways, and at the same time, we're adding more estrogen to an estrogen-dominant system. It wasn't ideal, but I didn't know any of this at that time. Now, fast forward to 2022, I got off of birth control. This was during the time that I was working on my mast cell activation syndrome experience, which, if you want me to talk about it, leave a comment below, because that's a whole other animal. But I was in the process of healing from mast cell activation syndrome and a list of symptoms that I was dealing with at that time. So I thought it was time. I was becoming more and more educated on birth control, prescription medications, and I decided to stop it. At first, all was fine. The cycle was normal, wasn't skipping any cycles. I was getting it every month. I didn't have any pain or anything. But I would say maybe 3 to 6 months in, I started noticing that I was feeling very bloated and inflamed in the luteal phase. And at the same time, I noticed that my breast started hurting. And then I started noticing pain in the lower belly, sometimes in the anus area. It would make me want to go to the bathroom, but I wouldn't always have a bowel movement. It felt a lot like IBS, and I had dealt with IBS my whole life prior to developing mast cell activation syndrome, where I would be constipated for 10 plus days at a time. It was horrible. So I was kind of familiar with the feeling, but it was a little different because the pain was a lot lower and it would come and go. It would be painful enough that it would get on the way, but it wouldn't last long. So it was more bearable, but it got pretty annoying pretty quickly because it started happening a lot in the luteal phase. Almost every day from the moment that I ovulated, that's when the luteal phase starts, until the moment I got my period, I would have symptoms on a daily basis. And at first it was just in the morning, then slowly I started having them throughout the day, and then I started waking up with those symptoms at night. So it became a frequent thing that even though they weren't lasting long, they became pretty frequent. It was affecting my quality of life significantly. I thought to myself, I'm going to give myself some time before I do a Dutch test because I've been on birth control for so long. Of course, it's going to impact the results. I know my hormones are probably all over the place. My body is not even responding yet the way it should because it's been suppressed for so long. So I gave myself a whole year before I did the Dutch test to see where my hormones were, how I was detoxing estrogen. When I tested my hormones in 2023, I didn't see elevated estrogen or progesterone. In fact, they were on the lower end. I didn't see any abnormalities in the detox pathways either because hormones were overall low, which didn't make any sense because I had symptoms in the luteal phase, which matched estrogen dominance. I thought, okay, maybe I just need to give it some time. I've been on birth control for so long. Give it some time. Maybe things will go back to normal. Things didn't go back to normal. In fact, it became the thing in the luteal phase. This was the new normal, and it became frustrating. During this time, even though I didn't know what was going on with the detox pathways because I couldn't see anything on the Dutch test, I still decided to do DIM, which is very common for estrogen dominance. It pushes estrogen through the right or the healthier pathway. And I also did Vitex to help with the ovulation and progesterone levels. And I also made sure that I was getting nutrients, changing my diet, eating more variety, getting a multivitamin, all the things that I could do to help with the detox process, but also help my body recover from birth control and make its own hormones. Nothing changed. And keep in mind, every time that I try new things, I always give it time. 3 months at least, especially when it comes to hormones. So when I say it didn't work, assume that I tried it for at least a good 3 months and it didn't work. That's a pretty good time frame. Whenever you're going after hormones, you want to give it a good 3 months because the body takes time to respond to things that you're adding to your diet or supplements. Then fast forward to 2024, this is where I started making a lot of changes. I started going against everything that I believed, everything that I thought, that was taught, and just listening to my body and see what worked. I believe it was September 2024 where I started changing my diet and I started eating more carbohydrates. Up to this point, I had been mostly in ketosis, very low carb. I was doing that as a way to control insulin and blood sugar because I was terrified of developing blood sugar dysregulation. I started eating a little bit more carbs, and by December of 2024, most of my calories were coming from carbs, about 50% or so. And then I was doing 25% protein, 25% fat, so pretty high carb. I started noticing, first of all, that I had a lot more energy. My energy was off the charts. I started feeling a lot more awake. I felt more resilient. I was recovering much faster after exercise. I could exercise more. I was feeling stronger. A lot of things started shifting. And I continued with this for another 6 months or so. I would say probably summer of 2025. I started also noticing that it was helping a lot with my nervous system dysregulation. All the symptoms that I would have, the anxiety, uneasiness in my body, being very hypervigilant, scanning my body for symptoms. One thing that I also noticed, which is pretty interesting, I felt more creative when I was eating more carbs. A lot more creative, and I'm typically creative by nature. But the nervous system stuff really surprised me because that was something I had been dealing with for a very long time since I developed mast cell activation syndrome. It was a side effect of that, and I couldn't get to the bottom of it. I was trying so many different things about the nervous system. which, by the way, if you want me to talk about what has helped me, I can do a video about that too, because I've tried a lot, like a lot. So if you want that, just let me know in the comments, and that would be another video that I can create in the future. I should say here that if you are somebody that is overweight, you already have blood sugar dysregulation, insulin resistance, it would not make sense for you to go high carb, because that's only going to lead to more inflammation. This would be people that would benefit more from going into ketosis, so more low carb, moving more, building more muscle, etc. If you are like me, you move a lot, you do not have insulin resistance or blood sugar dysregulation, then you can try to go high carb, because you're not going to do this forever. This is just to get your body out of that state of deprivation and nourish your body so your body feels safe. And this is one of the reasons why it helped with the nervous system, because more carbs signal safety in the body. One thing to also note is that in the winter is not ideal to do this, because in the winter we're more likely to become insulin resistant. We spend more time indoors depending on where you are. If you're in higher latitude, you're probably not spending as much time outdoors, not enough sun. So you're not regulating your blood sugar very well. And you're most likely being bombarded by blue light, which is an independent factor when it comes to blood sugar dysregulation and insulin resistance. Even though I did it in the winter, I don't recommend it, because I don't know what you're doing with your lifestyle. I was extremely strict with my lifestyle in the winter months. I was getting the light first thing in the morning, get as much light as possible during the day, moving my body, blocking blue light. So I don't know if that's you, and if it's not you, you can cause more damage. Just keep that in mind. It might not be appropriate for you in the winter, but you can try to do this in the spring or summer. That'll be the ideal time, because we have more access to fruits and vegetables, so it's easier to get more carbs, and at the same time, your environment is also supporting blood sugar regulation. So that's the best time that I would try this. One way that you can tell how many carbs you're consuming would be to use an app called the Chronometer app, which I love. I use it with all of my clients, because it also gives you the micronutrients, so you can see the vitamins, the minerals that you're getting, how good your diet is, and make changes accordingly. The Chronometer app will also calculate the daily caloric intake based on your goals, based on your weight, based on your activity level. It does all of that for you. The only thing that you would have to change is just the macro distribution. So this would be how many carbs, protein, and fat. And you can do this by just entering the percentage in the app. For example, if you're doing 50% carbs, that would be the carbs, and then it would be 25% protein, 25% fat. If you're doing 40% carbs, which would be the lowest that I would go for if you're trying to do high carb, then you do 40% carbs, 30% protein, and then 30% fat. So up to you. You can also be somewhere in the middle, but just know those percentages, because those will help you when you use the Chronometer app. And then pay attention to your micronutrients. See what you're missing on a daily basis. You don't have to use the app every single day, but you can get a good idea by using it for a whole week to see how your diet is on a daily basis, what you're missing on average. And those would also be nutrients that most likely you are low in and you don't even know, because we don't have perfect testing for nutrient deficiencies. It takes some time, but once you know, and you can make adjustments through your diet or even supplements. And I would recommend at this stage, get a prenatal. It helps. I did that as well. I was doing prenatal for a long time, so I just stayed on it during this time that I was doing the high carb diet. If your diet is providing everything, then you are Gucci. As you're doing this, this is also the time when you want to check your thyroid. I went back in time and I started looking at all of my tests, and I realized that I had always been low thyroid, subclinical hypothyroidism, very poor conversion of T4 to T3. This is a problem because your thyroid impacts how you're going to metabolize estrogen and how you're going to excrete it. It slows down everything. So it makes you more prone to estrogen dominance. And if you have that, I will put actually the ranges, the functional ranges somewhere here on the screen so that you know what you're looking for. You definitely want to check TSH, free T4, and free T3, not just TSH alone, which is what most doctors order. You can also order your own labs. I will put a link below in the description box. Make sure you're getting a good panel, and you can also go beyond that and check the auto antibodies, reverse T3, but at least these three. You want to have the TSH, free T4, free T3. If it is low, we gotta support this. Now, eating enough, getting a variety of nutrients in your diet, that will already help with the thyroid because you need nutrients. You need to be eating enough so you don't slow it down. You also want to be supporting your circadian rhythm. It's very foundational. It's something I've been doing for a very long time. So I knew that wasn't going to be the thing that would change my symptoms, but you definitely want to have that as a foundation. What I mean by that is you want to be getting sunlight first thing in the morning, within the first hour of waking up, ideally during sunrise if you can. Go outside as much as possible during the day. Get as much sun in your eyes as possible, naked eyes. Don't look at it directly, just, natural light from the environment. And try to block the blue light during the day, blue blockers, and especially at night after sunset, wear red lenses. So you're blocking all the blue light. Naturally, you wouldn't have blue light at that time. So be mindful of that because that's very foundational. That's going to control your hormones, your entire physiology. For me, though, this was something I had already optimized at that time. This wasn't the factor that needed any change. But it might be in your case. At this time, I decided to do desiccated thyroid. This is similar to eating beef liver or supplementing beef liver, I should say. Same thing here, but you're supplementing the thyroid, which will give you the T4 and the T3. This was great for me as well. I did notice a shift in energy. I felt warmer, which was incredible because with low thyroid, usually you're going to run pretty cold. And you will find out. You can check your temperature for a few days. You can do it a few times a week, mid-morning, and see what your temperature is. If it's constantly below 98.6, then you're running cold. And that could be a sign. Actually, that was the way that we would tell if somebody had low thyroid, way before we had testing. We would check the temperature. If you're always running cold, most likely your thyroid is low. So that's an easy way to tell, but you can also test. I would highly recommend testing because you don't know. It's the only way to know for sure. With the desiccated thyroid, I started with one brand that's called Priority 1, which you can find on my full script, save 20%. I will put the link of that in the description box. Priority 1 is a good place to start because it gives you a smaller dose. It starts, I believe, at 32.5 milligrams per capsule, which is pretty low. You want to be careful with the thyroid because if you're doing too much, it can lead to hyperthyroid symptoms. So it's good to start low and slow. And ideally, you want to increase the dose every week or every couple of weeks. And when you increase it, you do it by another capsule. So 32.5 milligrams every day for about a week. Then you do 2 capsules of that for another week. Then add another capsule for another week and so on. When I got to 4 capsules, this is when I started noticing hyperthyroid symptoms. For me, it was more like palpitations, just feeling like my heart was beating a little faster. I felt hot, and I knew I was doing a little bit too much. This does not last. The moment that you stop taking it or reduce the dose, it goes back to normal. So don't worry about it. This is fine. Just pay attention to your body and see how you're feeling, because if you're doing too much, that's a high dose for you. Go back to the previous dose that you were tolerating just fine. You can also take a break from it for a few days before you start taking it again, and that's fine as well. In my case, though, I did the Priority 1, and then when I got to that point, I realized this is too much for me. It was about, 120-something milligrams at that point. So I knew about 90 milligrams or 3 capsules of the Priority 1 at 32.5 milligrams per capsule was pretty good. This is when I switched and I went for this one. The actually, I don't know if you can see that. Forefront Health. Raw desiccated thyroid glandular. The difference between that and this is that this has a higher dose to start with. This is 65 milligrams. So this is 2 capsules of the Priority 1. So I wouldn't start with this one because it can be a little strong and you might not need as much. That's the thing. When you are increasing the dose of the thyroid supplement, you're trying to find the right dose for you so that you feel great. You're not overdoing it because some women do need more. I've actually had women that have taken 3 or 4 of this, which is 65 milligrams per capsule. Some women just need more. That might not be you. That wasn't me. You want to take enough until you figure out what the right dose is for you, and then you can stay on that supplement if you'd like, or just switch to something like this. Priority 1 also has higher dosing. I believe they do have 65, 130 milligrams. So does this one too. I was experimenting. So I went for this because I wanted to see how I would feel on this. So I could tell you and let you know. This works really well as well. So both of them are great options. Choose whichever one you want to go with, but start with the priority one so you have more flexibility with the dosing. During this time, I was also taking Tadka before taking progesterone. This was something I was already doing prior to doing anything about the estrogen dominance. I am more prone to gallstones, and it is incredible for gallstones. I have a whole article on that. Go check that out if you want to learn more about Tadka. Tadka is incredible because it helps you with the excretion of estrogen. It supports the bile flow, which is how you're going to get rid of that processed estrogen. And then ideally, you're having bowel movements, regular bowel movements, at least one bowel movement per day that feels complete so that you are getting that estrogen and other things out of the body. Ideally, your drainage is open. If you don't know much about drainage, I will leave a link below because I'm going to share more about the drainage protocol that I recommend. So sign up for that if you want to be notified. Now, with progesterone, the one that I use is this one, Progest E. Pretty clear, Progest E. It is a gel. Ideally, you want to let this warm up a little bit. You want to store it in the fridge. Oh, you can see it, but there you go. Whoops, it's going to come out. All right, so it's a gel. And it is incredible. This is natural progesterone, and you can take it orally. When you apply it, you want to apply it to your gums or the inside of the cheek, massage it, make sure that you're doing it and not just, putting it in there and then swallowing it. You will absorb it better that way. This was a game changer for me. I knew I needed this because while I was doing all the high carb and the thyroid support, I was also testing my hormones with Inito. Inito is this device. Women use it for fertility reasons. They're trying to get pregnant. I wasn't using it for that. I was experimenting as always. So Inito was able to show me that in my luteal phase, I was always making way too much estrogen compared to progesterone. And I've shared that in the video that I made about how much progesterone you're making relative to estrogen, if it's enough or not. That's where I shared one of my graphs. And you can see how it was. And that was the typical thing for me. I was barely making any progesterone, but I had plenty of estrogen in the luteal phase, which was not picked up on the Dutch at all. Something to note, if you've done the Dutch test, it might miss it because it's only on one day. That's the limitation. With Inito, I was using it every day in the luteal phase so I could get the curve and see exactly what's going on. And I wasn't making enough progesterone. So this was incredible. This changed my life. Let's talk about the dose first. When you start with this, I would shoot for about 20 to 30 milligrams per day. This is what typically you would naturally make. We're trying to mimic that. And if that is enough, that clears your symptoms, your estrogen dominant symptoms. You don't have to do more. Some women will need a lot more. They can go up to 100 milligrams per day. If you're doing 20 to 30 milligrams of this per day, then that's about 3 to 5 drops per day. You can do them all at once. You can split them throughout the day, whatever works for you. Keep in mind that if you do too much, this will make you super tired and put you to sleep. So that's when you know that that's the highest that you can go. Don't go above that because then you cannot function. That's kind of like the side effect of too much natural progesterone. That's how you know that you did a little bit too much. So I always recommend starting with 1 drop at a time, see how you feel. Next day you can do 2 drops at the same time, see how you feel. And the right dose will depend on when your symptoms improve. As I kept taking this, I went higher with the dose, at least 60 milligrams or so a day. And that's when I noticed the biggest shift in my symptoms. No more breast soreness whatsoever. The pain that I would feel, that went away on most days. Maybe I had it a day or two and it maybe happened once a day, didn't last long. So huge improvement. But the thing that I noticed the most was how calm I felt. Nothing could bother me. Nothing. I was so chill. It was incredible. I realized I had been progesterone deficient my whole life. It was incredible. It changed the luteal phase for me. I started loving my luteal phase while I was on this. I've also had clients that have stayed on it while pregnant in the first 2 to 3 months or so, and it has helped a lot, especially for clients that had multiple miscarriages in the past. Extremely helpful. So just know that in case that's you, again, not medical advice, just sharing what I do. One thing to also note with this, you do not want to take it before ovulation. So it's very important that you're testing and making sure you've ovulated before you start this, because again, we're trying to mimic your natural cycle. This can cause you to skip periods. Your body may think that you already ovulated. It is important that you check your ovulation first. I was doing this with Inito because I was already checking my cycle and I knew exactly when I got that LH surge. That's your ovulation trigger. You can also use LH strips, which you can get on Amazon. I can put a link to my Amazon storefront in the description, where you can get the same ones that I use, because I use both if I don't want to waste the Inito strips. And that will tell you. Once you know that you ovulated, you can wait 24 hours if you'd like to start this, or you can start it immediately. I have found out that if I start taking this immediately after I find out that the LH spiked, that I need a lot less, and I also need to take it for a much shorter period of time to get the same exact results. So right now, for example, I still take it, but a lot less. Again, I start the day that I see the LH surge. Maybe I take 3 drops or so at night, which is about 18 milligrams. And I also maybe take it for 4 days or so instead of every day in the luteal phase. And I still feel great. I don't have any changes. No symptoms have come back. It's always good to keep some of this at hand because you never know when you're going to need it. It is incredible when you're under a lot of stress. I actually just ordered another bottle this morning because I'm going to Europe in less than 2 weeks and I wanted to have a fresh bottle with me just in case. But if you're under a lot of stress, this is going to be a game changer because you tend to make less progesterone under a lot of stress, which means you're more likely to be more estrogen dominant and have symptoms in the luteal phase. At this time, I am no longer doing high carb. Maybe I'm doing about 40% carbs, 30% protein, 30% fat. I also am not on any thyroid support at this time. I am not taking any prenatals or anything like that. I am doing a multivitamin, but that's prepping for the trip that I have coming up, which if you want to read about that, I wrote a whole article about what I do before a trip so I can have an amazing trip and not worry about getting sick or whatever. And again, I still take progesterone for a few days in the beginning of the luteal phase, and slowly I will continue to reduce the dose and reduce the frequency as well and see how I feel, but so far so good. Of course, there are many ways you can support estrogen dominance. I don't use the same method with all of my clients. This is just what worked for me because that's what I needed. You might have a completely different case, but this is something to know about, especially if you're not making enough progesterone relative to estrogen, but you're still metabolizing estrogen just fine, then this might be the way. And especially if you also have low thyroid, which in my experience is very common with women that have estrogen dominance or low progesterone. I hope that you found this helpful, and I will see you in the next one.